myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is Those Were the Days with George Mitchell. How are you, George?
I'm fine, Steve. Thank you.
Good to see you, mate. Good to see you. And as always, we hand over the controls to you of the good ship NUFC Matters and let you delve back in history. And what year are we looking at today?
We're looking at 1986-87. It's the first real full year of Willie McFall being the manager. He's had a good year the year before, and want to see them make progress. But it's interesting. The feeling, I think, is that we need to consolidate. You know, under Charlton we had a peculiar year, and Willie McFall seemed to recover that, but last year. But now this year, it would be nice to consolidate, and there's some interesting things about it as we'll go through. You'll see. We're back in 86-87, so if you're into music, I Want to Dance with Somebody was Top of the Pops. Never Gonna Give You Up, Rick Astley, of course, who's this last year or so has been in the news because they dredged it up for something else. In fact, I think he even went to Glastonbury last year.
Yeah, he did.
And Faith by George Michael, and of course a really hot one for La Bamba by Los Lobos is something that sticks in my mind. I don't know why, but it does. And then if you're a movie buff, Full Metal Jacket was on and caused all sorts of controversy, but a brilliant picture. Wings of Desire, Lethal Weapon, which was the start of almost a franchise. The Princess Bride, and then The Untouchables. Great movies, some of them, but that's where we are in terms of life in general. Moving on to Newcastle United, well, we start the season off as usual with a whole series of friendlies. I suppose they use them as warm-up games. I mean, we went to Blackburn, Portsmouth, Isle of Man, Linfield in Northern Ireland, Coleraine in Northern Ireland, Carlisle. We played a testimonial at Durham City to make some money for Durham City, which I think was a very worthy thing to do. And then a visiting team, Monterey, came and visited St. James's, and there was an interesting friendly there. At least 10,000 turned up for that one, which is something. And it was 1-1. Billy Whitehurst scored the goal. Throughout the friendlies, lots of goals: 2-2, 2-2, 5-1, 3-2, 3-2, and then 8-0 at Durham City, and then 1-1 against Monterey. So they got a good kickstart to the season, and they needed it because our first game, of course, is it Liverpool, who were second in the title race that year.
A new sponsor as well, George. Sorry to interrupt you. A new sponsor was the call of the day. Greenall's came.
Yes,
on board.
Greenall's. Yes, on the shirt. Yeah,
and they had that horrendous. They had that horrendous idea for people who bought the replica shirt that they had to get people. You either had to, or you had to get your mum to stitch it on, which was an absolute nightmare. There's Gaza.
It was absolutely awful. Yeah, it was a nightmare. I think at one stage they switched to iron-on as well. They tried that. Absolute disaster. Yeah. Well, first games at Liverpool. First games at home against Liverpool, and they were second in the table. I mean, the championship the year before this one was basically a Liverpool championship because it was between Everton and Liverpool at the end, and Everton won it. Liverpool were second. They came with a very strong team. Willie McFall, very loyal, like previous managers have. Our team, Martin Thomas, John Anderson, John Bailey, McCreary, Jeff Clark, Glenn Roder, Alan Davis, Paul Gascoigne, Billy Whitehurst, Peter Beardsley, and Kenny Wharton. Neil MacDonald was the sub, and halfway through the second half, he went on for Paul Gascoigne. 34,000 at this game at St. James's Park, and that reflects the popularity of Liverpool as much as anything. And there's an action shot, nice clear one, that one. It's and another with that's John Anderson, isn't it? Going hell for
against Stevie Nicol. Yeah,
that's right. That's
Look
right.
at the barriers in the background as well, because I mean, we covered on the previous shows about football hooliganism.
That's right.
On the increase, and of course the fences were put up, George.
Absolutely right. That's right. And the porter cabins in the background, because they're still building the stadium, you know. Anyway, Liverpool manager's Kenny Dalglish, and he brings a very talented squad with him. Mike Hooker in goal, Alan Hansen, Mark Lawrenson. Now, Barry Venison has just switched from our friends down the road to Liverpool. Gary Gillespie, Kevin McDonald, Steve Mahon, Jan Molby, Ronnie Whelan, Craig Johnson, the Australian, and Ian Rush. And Dalglish plays himself as substitute in this match. I've got to be honest, it was an interesting game, a good game of football, but it was Ian Rush's game. He just ran our defence ragged. I think I haven't seen Glenn Roeder and Jeff Clark look so uncomfortable against the centre forward as they did that day against Ian Rush. 2 goals, 1 in 5 minutes, 1 in 83 minutes, and that was Liverpool winning 2-0. But it's not a game we were going to be involved in any sense. Slight imagination. You could see why they were title contenders. So anyway, our next game is an away game at Tottenham. We're going to Spurs. Another difficult team to play because they're regarded as one of the top chances for the title. 25,000 at White Hart Lane. David Pleat's still the manager. David Pleat's just become the manager, as it was Peter Shreves that was the manager in the season before. But the team's hardly changed. Ray Clements, Graham Roberts, Richard Gough, the big Scottish centre-half they bought from Rangers, Gary Mabbitt, Gary Stevens, Glenn Hoddle, names to conjure with, Mark Falco, Clive Allen, and of course, none other than Chris Waddle. McFall picks the same 11 he started with and sends him off to Tottenham. Fingers crossed, because this is going to be a tough game. It was a good game, but the lads dug their heels in. They weren't giving anything away. In fact, they were very, very upset that right on half time, slightly over the 45, Clive Allen, who was a deadly goal scorer, got a goal which our lads hotly disputed as being offside, but they didn't get the decision, so they went in 1-0 down. And they must have been really upset about that, because they'd done quite well. They came out the second half. I think they upset about the goal, made them roll their sleeves up and had a real go at Spurs in the second half. Nearly got caught a couple of times on breakaways with Chrissy Waddle, of course. But then right towards the end, 87 minutes, who should come out of the woodwork but Peter Beardsley to score and equalise. Then we get a 1-1 draw, which very creditable performance at Spurs at this time. And we're now have another game in the south. We're away to Luton Town. Luton Town at Kenilworth Road, nearly 10,000 at the game, which would just about fill Kenilworth Road. Willie McFall sticks by his opening team: Thomas Anderson, Bailey, McCreary, McDonald, Roder, Bogey, Gascoigne, Whitehurst, Beardsley and Wharton. And Luton Town got John Moore as the manager now, who they'd taken from, I think from Rotherham. He was making a name for himself there. A good side, but they're a lot of them lads that are 30 plus and on the downslope of their careers, but nonetheless still good footballers. Some good names amongst them: Steve Foster, Mal Donaghy, Peter Nicholas, Brian Steen, centre forward, they got from Coventry, and Mike Newell, who was a left winger then, and became a very, very popular left winger. Not a bad football game, but in terms of goals, well, they could have played till now and would never have scored. Neither side looked like they were going to score, and we end up with a 0-0, which is because it's an away point is always nice to have, but not a game to put in the record books, really, not for any of the football anyway. Then we're back at home on the Wednesday, and we're playing Queen's Park Rangers at home, and everybody's hoping that we'll get on a winning track again. 23,500 at the game. Willie McFall picks an unchanged team. The only difference is the substitutes Ian Stewart, and halfway through the first half, actually, Ian Stewart replaces Kenny Wharton, who's got an injury. Queen's Park Rangers now managed by Jim Smith, who we get to know very well, and a talented team, but a team of people from other London clubs who are sort of on their way out. You know, David Seaman, Gary Chivers, Ian Dawes, Sammy Lee, Martin Allen, who's the brother of the Clive Allen that was playing for Spurs, Wayne Faraday, the name we know very briefly, Robbie James, Gary Bannister, and Johnny Byrne, talented centre forward from West Ham, quite a dangerous centre forward. First half, nothing in it. Some nice football from both sides, but nobody going to score a goal. And then just after half time, Johnny Byrne on the edge of the penalty does a nice body swerve to leave Clark and Rhoda sitting on the backsides, and that's QPR 1 up, 49 minutes. Then right to nearly the end, and unfortunately, Ando managed to get his hand on the ball, and they get a penalty, and Gary Bannister makes it 2-0. So a 2-0 loss at QPR is a bit disappointing, but could be worse. No, we're now at home we'll lose, and that doesn't go down very well. But the next game is Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday and us are having quite a tussle at this period of our careers, both clubs, because we came up together, and the games between the two have been very competitive, should we say. Willie McFall makes one or two changes. He does something which I think other managers have done, and he follows suit, and he brings in a young centre back called Kevin Scott. That he's got from the Wearside League, and within weeks of joining the club, Kevin Scott's he's got him in the first team, which is amazing, really. And of course, there've been a couple of injuries against QPR, and this is a Wednesday match, and Joe Allen slots back into the side. Howard Wilkinson's still manager of Wednesday, and their team has hardly changed since he took it over. Martin Hodge, Mel Sterland, Paul Hart, Glyn Snowden, Gary Megson, who we know up here, Mark Chamberlain, ex Fulham winger, Tony Gregory, Gary Shelton, Lee Chapman, big blonde centre forward, dangerous centre forward, and Carl Schutt, who was a dangerous forward. The game's off to a poor start for us. Carl Schutt and Mel Sterling just scored just before half time, 44 minutes, and it looks like it's curtains, you know. Come back after the second half, but whatever Willie said in the dressing room, he's got them fired up because they're having a real go at Sheffield Wednesday. 79 minutes, Joe Allen scores, and then lo and behold, we're debuted in centre half. Kevin Scott from a corner heads a nice goal on 81 minutes to equalise things, and just when we think we're going to get a 2-2 draw, up pops this mercurial little man called Carl Schutt on 89 minutes to make it 3-2 to Sheffield Wednesday. Very disappointing, and I still remember the groans in the Gallagher corner when that winning goal went in, and also reflect on the fact that, of course, because it's a late goal, there would be a large number of the Gallagher corner who, when the 10-minute flag went down, would already be on the bus home. They wouldn't even know that had happened till they got home, which I always used to find amusing. Anyway, we're off to Coventry now, to Highfield Road, and decent football side, but we really should be challenging people like Coventry if we're going to do anything. We'll go to Coventry and they changed their manager. He's now George Curtis, an ex-Coventry fullback. And their team is, again, a team that's full of former stars at other First Division sides, like Mickey Adams, Brian Burrows, Steve Sledgley. The centre-half, somebody that we get to know called Brian Kilclean, Trevor Peake, Greg Downs, Nicky Pickering, Dave Bennett and Cyril Regis, all some really talented footballers there. But, no more than ours are. Willie McFall picks it's site change because Jeff Clark's fit again, and the centre-half position says, so he goes back in, and Paul Gascoigne's back in. So it's virtually the team that started the season with Willie McFall. 11,500 at the game. Not a very impressive game for us. On 14 minutes, of all people, Brian Kilclean at a corner heads in, first goal for Coventry, 14 minutes. And then just after half-time, Dave Bennett gets a second. And then at 60 minutes, Mickey Adams gets the third. So we come away from Coventry with a 3-0 defeat. A pretty miserable defeat, because if we're really serious about trying to do something in this league, they're the sort of sides that we're going to have to beat, but not on this occasion. We then come home to a game against Wimbledon. The clowns of the First Division, 21,500 at the game, and Willie McFall's made a change at goalkeeper. He's brought in young Gary Kelly, but apart from that, the team stays the same, and I think that the crowds appreciate that he's trying to get a settled team to play, but so we now welcome Wimbledon. Dave Bassett is the manager. Goalkeeper David Besant, who we get to know very well. Kevin Gage, Mark Morris, Nigel Winterburn, who still occasionally appears on the television, that got from Arsenal. Laurie Sanchez's character, Glenn Hodges, who again is a name we get to know here, and then a little man called Dennis Wise, who ex-Chelsea, who we get to know for not the best of reasons after his sojourn working for Mr. Ashley, and Alan Clark, who was on his way out from Leeds, and John Fashanu, a big centre forward, who is almost legend in terms of being centre forward. John Fashanu, for me, starts this. They're a hard team to beat. They're going to give a go, and I'm glad to say that our lads dig their heels in and don't get kicked off the ball. And it's a bit of skill from Paul Gascoigne on 55 minutes, and we get a 1-0 win against Wimbledon, which is a relief, because we're league positions looking a bit precarious at the moment, but at least we're making a change. So we're now at the League Cup first leg at Bradford City, and we want to hope and pray that we might have a go at this trophy, but let's wait and see. Trevor Chelly's the manager at Bradford, and as you can imagine, he pitches in with lots of people who he's played with at Leeds and other places. but some names in that we know, like Peter Jackson, Chris With, who used to play for us, Mark Ellis, John Henry, and then another name at centre forward called Don Goodman, who becomes an arch enemy down the road for a while. Good centre forward, though, dangerous player. And of course, he's a regular on Sky as well at the moment. Willie McFall sends out an unchanged team, and he's bought Andy Thomas in. He puts him in, and Billy Waiters goes down to substitute. We're just hopeless. I mean, Bradford didn't have to try very hard to beat Will in this game, and it looked like it's going to be 0-0. And then on 59 minutes, unfortunately, Kevin Scott, who's got back into the team, brings Don Goodman down, and Greg Abbott's 59 minutes scores with a penalty. And then to wrap it up on 69 minutes, Don Goodman scores a regulation goal, and we're 2-0 down, which is disappointing to get that at Bradford. So we come home, and we're at home. Sorry, we're still away, and we're away at Norwich City, and this is another team that we really should be having a go at and taking points off at Carrow Road. 15,700 at the game. Willie McFall sends unchanged team. Sorry, it is changed because Jeff Clark's fit again, and the centre half position is changed, and it's and Joe Allen's he's put it in the team as well alongside Andy Thomas. It's an interesting team because the people are used to the big man up front, and Andy Thomas is not a little man, but he's more about speed and skill rather than brute force. Norwich City, Ken Brown's their manager, ex-West Ham player and ex-Norwich City player, and they have some interesting characters in their team. Ian Culverhouse at fullback, a man called Steve Bruce at the centre of their defence, Mike Phelan that they got from Manchester United, Kevin Drinkell, who they've just brought in from Grimsby, and who's a pain in the backside to us most of the time. And then on the left side, Wayne Biggins, a very talented young winger. It's a game which it's one of those where we never look like we're going to get in it. It was not any end-to-end stuff. It was all played in the middle of the field is my memory of this. And the 4 minutes, of course, the Norwich scored, and who would it be? Kevin Drinkell, of course, who scores against us every time he played for Grimsby and others against us. And second half, briefly after half time, the lads have a go, but never ever looked like scoring a goal. And then on 68, same Kevin Drinkell from a corner scores again, and 68 minutes it's 2-0, and that's the end of that's the result. That's how it ends in what was a disappointing result, because that's an away game we should have been thinking of getting something out of. So we now go away to Southampton, and Dale's not a happy hunting ground for us. 14,600, and Chris Nichols now the manager of Southampton, and they've got a team of talented players who are are sort of former stars with other teams, like Peter Shilton's in goal, and Mark Wright, Mark Dennis, David Armstrong, Jimmy Case from Liverpool, Colin Clark, and Joe Jordan from Manchester United is the centre forward now. And on the substitutes bench, a young man called Matt Letitia, who becomes a very famous player, and indeed another one who see occasionally as a commentator. So they're not going to be easy. And Willie McFall sends his same team with Paul Gascoigne now has gone to substitute, and get off to a flying start. Andy Thomas scores on 14 minutes. Unfortunately for us, Colin Clark on 17 minutes scores, and that's how it stays at half-time. After half-time, Southampton really give it a go, and there's a period in between of 10 minutes between the 70th minute and the 80th minute. They score 3 goals. Colin Clark gets his hat-trick, completes his hat-trick, and Mark Dennis gets a header from a corner to make it 4-1. Very disappointing result from there, but as I say, Southampton, with that talent in the team, always likely to turn it on occasionally, and they certainly did on that occasion. We're now home for the return of the second leg of the League Cup against Bradford City, and people certainly, I can remember in the Gallagher corner, people were hopeful that we could turn this round. It wasn't a done deal that we were going to lose it. 15,800 at the game, which that crowd reflects what people think about what efforts in the League Cup in past years. Anyway, Willie McFall plays the same team. Gary Kelly is still in goal and so on. He doesn't make a change on the right. He brings Paul Stevenson in off the bench and puts Ian Stewart back off the bench. Bradford City, the same team that played us at Bradford, with Peter Jackson, Chris With in the team. And, of course, Don Goodman is playing up front for them. We give it a real go, but huff and puff without putting the ball in the back of the net in the first half. Have another go in the second half. And then on 65 minutes, Glenn Roeder managed to head in a corner and we get 1-0. And everybody's really straining at the bit to see if we can get an equaliser. But it doesn't come. It doesn't come. So Bradford go through 2-1 on goals, and another sort of disappointing foray into the League Cup by our team. So we now have to face on the Saturday a visit from Manchester City, and we're not entirely comfortable about this after the way we played against Bradford. 21,000 at the game. Willie McFall puts his faith in the people he's sent out before. The only difference is that centre forward, instead of Martin Thomas, he's brought back Tony Cunningham, and Martin Thomas goes to substitute. Manchester City now have changed their manager. He's gone to Jimmy Frizzell, who's managed lots of teams in that area. Great stalwart for Stoke City at one time as a player, now managing Manchester City, and their team with Steve Redmond, Kenny Clements, Mick McCarthy, Ian Brightwell, Andy May, Neil McNabb, Paul Simpson and David White. A tidy team that's not doing too badly. They're above us in the league, so we know it's not going to be easy. So we set, and interesting half hour, because Paul Simpson puts Manchester City in the lead, and you can feel the nerves in the Gallagher corner. And just before half time, Neil MacDonald gets an equaliser from the penalty spot, so when we think everybody's hoping when they come out after half time they might give this one a go. Well, for the first 10 minutes after the half time, they did give it a go. And 48 minutes, Paul Gascoigne scores a nice individual goal, and on 49 minutes, Tony Cunningham gets another from the corner. So a 3-1, and that's the way it stays to the end. And it never looked like changing. Manchester City didn't look to have the skill or the guile to make much difference in this game, and that's how it stayed. So we're now got another tricky home game against the Arsenal. That's me showing me age. Notice how I say the Arsenal, because that's how we used to talk about them in those days. They really did get almost reverential status because they were the Arsenal. Anyway, they come to St James's. They're one of the 4 teams. You know, there's the 2 Liverpool teams. There's Manchester United and there's Arsenal. The title's going to go there, somewhere near there is what's likely to happen. So it's going to be a tough one. 22,500 at the game. And Willie McFall picks exactly the same team, except at substitute, he bought a young man called Darren Jackson from Hibs, and Darren Jackson's the substitute on this occasion. Arsenal come, George Graham's the manager now, and a very talented team is the one with lots of names, you know, Viv Anderson, Kenny Sanson, who we get to know, David O'Leary, Tony Adams, David Rocastle, Paul Davis, Niall Quinn is at centre forward for them, big Irishman who makes a bigger name for himself when he joins our friends down the road. Peter Groves and Martin Hayes. But a good football side, a talented side. And they're going to give us a difficult game, and they do. Amazingly, the first goal on 67 minutes, because the first half was end-to-end but no goals, 67 minutes, is Viv Anderson, the right fullback. One of the very few goals he scores, but just sheer pace. What a very, very fast man he was. And he found himself in the penalty area and just lashed it in as he was going. That looked like to be the end of it, we thought, but no, along 66 minutes, Ian Stewart's comes in with a mazy dribble and a nice little shot to get an equaliser, and everybody thinks, oh, well, we're going to get a point out of this. Well, no such luck. Steve Williams of Arsenal on 72 minutes clinches a winner, and it's 2-1 to Arsenal, and we never looked like we would get an equaliser. It was settled, is the only way to describe it. And although we lost, I've got to say that in general, yes, the Gallagher corner was unhappy, but there was a sense of, well, they give it a go. I think that's what they were supporting Willie McFall about, was at least the team had a go. They didn't just lie down and die. Anyway, we're away now. The next game to Aston Villa. Another tough game. Villa playing well, above us in the league, so it's not going to be easy. 15,000 at Villa Park, which isn't a lot really. Billy McNeil, ex-Scottish manager, is now transferred from Manchester City to Aston Villa as manager. And it's a talented Villa side. Nigel Spink, Alan Evans, Dave Norton, Martin Keown, who ends up at Arsenal, Tony DeRigo, who they've just brought from London, Paul Birch, Steve Hodge from Nottingham Forest, Steve Hunt from Nottingham Forest, Tony Daly, Gary Thompson, and Mark Waters. Mark Waters is a very, very tricky winger and had a habit of giving us a hard time. Anyway, Willie McFall has the luxury of sending out an unchanged team with Gaza as a substitute, and partway through the second half, he has to come on because Paul Stevenson looked over, pulled the hamstring, and but to have Gaza to come on would seem not a bad swap in my opinion. Anyway, it's a good football game, but we got off to a poor start. Steve Hodge gives Villa the lead in 12 minutes. Then another 12 minutes later, in 24 minutes, he makes it 2-0 and they go in half-time at 2-0. And that's how it stayed. We huffed and puffed a little bit in the second half without ever actually looking as though we might score a goal, which is disappointing, but never mind. I think, again, that they give it a go, which is what the excuse the fans would give them. So we're back home now for Oxford United with 19,500 at the game, and those defeats, you can see the crowd dropping after each of those defeats that we've had. Willie McFall plays exactly the same team as he had in the previous game. Kenny Wharton's now the substitute. Oxford United with Maurice Evans as the manager, still being how can I say, paraded by their flamboyant owner and causing all sorts of problems off the pitch. A good side, a good football side, but littered with people who are former rather than current stars, but names that we know as well. I mean, Ray Houghton, the Liverpool midfielder, John Truick, who left us, Trevor Hibbert, and Kevin Brock, who's a midfielder with us, and the centre forward, of course, very dangerous centre forward from Liverpool, called John Aldridge. There's some good football played in this game, but it's one of those good games where they could played all night and neither would have scored. I remember being at that game and thinking when I went home, I couldn't remember how many actual shots at goal that the goalkeepers had to save, either of them. It was not the best 0-0. It wasn't the best draw. It was really, really second rate and best forgotten, I think, is the best way that I would describe it. So we're off now on our travels again. We're off to Leicester City, and we always have decent football games with Leicester City, and I don't think this is going to be any different. We're about on a par in the league, about neck and neck together in the league, so it's even Steven for this one. Leicester have changed their manager. It's now Brian Hamilton, the mercurial Irish forward, and they've made one or two changes in the side. Seem to buy a number of players from Ipswich, like Russell Osman, and Mark Venus is now in the back lineup, and of course they've got Gary McAllister from Manchester United / Leeds, Ian Wilson, Alistair Henry, Steve Moran, Tony Seeley from West Ham, who has North East connections, and Alan Smith, the former Arsenal centre forward, who doing a good job for them. Nice, tidy game of football, this one, when you read what it is, what the press say about it. And Willie McFall sends down unchanged team, and he's sorry, that's not right. He sends down what's should have been an unchanged team, but in the week before this game, Willie McFall buys a forward from West Ham called Paul Goddard, and drops Cunningham to the substitutes bench, and Paul Goddard takes the place in the forward line. When we look back on managers and signings they made, the impact that they have on Newcastle United, I would suggest fans, although this is a way back in the first division, they need to have a look at the impact that this signing has on Newcastle United, because it's crucial, absolutely crucial. Anyway, the game's going well. Couple of chances go missing. Paul Goddard looks like he's going to score when the fullback Simon Morgan basically handles the ball off the line. He would have got sent off for it these days. And Neil MacDonald scores from the resultant penalty. Just after half time, Alan Smith gets away from the defence of the corner and taps in at 47 minutes and makes it 1-1. Quite an entertaining game, but one which never looked like anybody was going to score. And I've got to be honest, if anybody was going to score, it was that man, Paul Goddard. So we now come home to a game against Watford. And that's a nice picture of, looks like Joe Allen to me.
It is. It's Joe Allen and scoring in that game against Sheffield Wednesday.
Sheffield Wednesday, yes, that's right. Anyway, it's against Watford. got to be on my medal. They're a talented side. That manager Graham Taylor, who's was very famous in his career as a manager. 23,500 at the game, which is not bad considering the results we've been having. And Willie McFall plays the same team with Tony Cunningham still as the substitute. However, halfway through the second half, Andy Thomas is injured and Cunningham has to come on. But everybody's wanting to see Paul Goddard. He's the one that they're interested in. Good. The game is even. Stephen Watford, as I say, with Graham Taylor, the names of people that's playing for them: David Bardsley, John McClelland, Wilf Rostron, ex Mackham, Nigel Callaghan, Kevin Richardson, Kenny Jackett, who's a manager of Millwall, I think, at the moment. John Barnes, of course, who we're getting to know very well, and Mark Falco, they got from Spurs, and of course that dangerous centre forward Luther Blissett, to keep her on my toes. Quiet first half, 0-0. Then second half starts the same way, and it's drifting. Everybody thinks, this is going to be a 0-0. Nobody's going to get a goal here. And then suddenly, Kenny Wharton makes a bad tackle in the penalty area, and Kenny Jackett scores from the penalty spot on 72 minutes. And that seems to wake our lot up, because within a few minutes, John Anderson's down the other end of the corner, blasting the one in from the edge of the box. So it's 1-1 on 78 minutes. And everybody thinks, well, that's it. But no, not with Newcastle. 1 minute later, Luther Blissett, that dangerous centre forward, just glides through the centre of our defence on 79 minutes, just 1 minute later, and we're down. We're 2-1 down. And, of course, everybody's resigned to a 2-1 defeat. And shortly after that, of course, I see the 10-minute flaggers in the Gallagher corner going home to get their buses and trains and wherever. Well, another mistake they made, because on 87 minutes, Neil MacDonald going through gets upended by Kenny Jackett and scores from the resulting penalty. So 2-2 against Watford, and at least a point on the board. And a relatively entertaining match, even though it was peculiar circumstances for the goals, I've got to say. We're now away to Chelsea. This is going to be a tough one, because they're regarded as one of the top sides at the moment. 14,500 at Stamford Bridge. John Holland's still their manager, and the team of a talented team with people like Kerry Dixon, Gordon Jury they now got from Scotland, having transferred to Spurs and then across to Chelsea. Pat Nevin, Keith Jones, Colin Pates, Keith Dublin, and Eddie Nedwiski is the goalkeeper. But excited to playing well and competing for the top 3 spots. There's no doubt about that. And it's going to be difficult for us. Willie McFall sends an unchanged team, and he makes Darren Jackson the substitute this time for this game. We don't expect anything out of this game, and lo and behold, that's typical Newcastle. They turn it on its head. Gordon Jury scores for Chelsea on 26 minutes. Andy Thomas scores on 41 minutes to a 1-1. Second half, 69 minutes, Andy Thomas does it again. And on 74 minutes, none other than Peter Beardsley makes it 3-1. Points that I don't think anybody at St James's Park or the fans thought we were going to get. It's on the pools coupons, Chelsea, I would have gone down as a banker. But typical Newcastle, we have a habit of turning things on our heads. We're now at home to West Ham United. And this is interesting because we ended the season last season with the farcical 8-1 defeat at West Ham. So everybody's hoping that we don't have that sort of debacle again. 22,000 at the game, and William McFall sends out an unchanged team with Darren Jackson as the substitute, and John Lyle is the manager of West Ham, and their talented team: Phil Parks, Tony Gale, Paul Hilton, Ray Stewart, George Paris, Alan Dickens, Mark Ward, Alan Devonshire, Frank McNamee, Danish Scottish centre forward, and Tony Cotty, who always gives us trouble. However, they didn't give us any trouble this Saturday afternoon, because on 30 minutes, Neil MacDonald scores, 33, Andy Thomas scores, and it looks like it's going to settle after half-time at 2-0, because there's nothing happening. And then suddenly on 65 minutes, we'll get to see a piece of why William McFall bought Darren Jackson. He scored a beautiful individual goal to make it 3. And then just before the end, Andy Thomas scores his second and our fourth to make it a very comfortable victory, which could hear the audible sighs of relief, actually, when the third and fourth goals went in the Gallagher corner, because the memories of what had gone before at West Ham weren't very pleasant ones. But 4-0 win, and we're moving in the right direction in the league, and the goals for columns starting to look quite rich, and let's see what happens now. Now the next game is what they used to call in those days the Full Members Cup, and this is our first venture into this one, and we're drawn away at Everton, and of course they're the champions. It goes without saying it's going to be a difficult game, and a difficult game it is. 7, but we had the Merseysiders supporters are as puzzled by this trophy as we are. 7,500 at Goodison Park for a match, and they're the league champions, which, you know, I find that incredible. But it says what people thought about this new trophy. They weren't sure about it. Anyway, Howard Coundle's still their manager. Lots of big names in the Everton team: Neville Southall in goal, Dave Watson, Kevin Ratcliffe, Neil Adams, Kevin Sheedy, Trevor Stephen, Paul Power, Adrian Heath, and Graham Sharp is the centre forward. Willie McFall has the luxury of selling an unchanged team, except he swaps. He has to replace Paul Goddard, who's injured, and he puts Darren Jackson in, and Paul Gascoigne remains as a substitute. We get off to a nightmare start. 4 minutes, Kevin Sheedy scores. 6 minutes, Graham Sharp scores. 21 minutes, Graham Sharp scores. 38 minutes, Graham Sharp scores. So in the space of half an hour, Graham Sharp's got a hat-trick, and we're going at half-time 4-0 down. And I think people are wondering if it's going to be a cricket score, because that's the way it looked. It just were, Graham Sharp was just seemed to be unplayable. However, they come out after half-time. More spirited defence by Newcastle, and at least they're having a go. In fact, on 71 minutes, Andy Thomas scores a goal, and people think, 4-1, and they're playing well, but stuff was knocked out of them by Adrian Heath scoring in the 77th minute to make it 5-1. And then just before the end, Andy Thomas scores a second, but Everton run out in the Full Members Cup. That's the end of our trip, 5-2, and it's an unhappy venture into that. But it's not. It's our history in these trophies, I'm afraid. It's
just looking back at that 4-0 as well against West Ham, the game you just talked about. I'm sure, we've spoken about televised games. I'm sure that was a one of the first televised league games on ITV. I might be wrong, but I mean, Newcastle, of course, against Liverpool in the FA Cup in 83, 84 was the first televised game. But I'm sure that Newcastle West Ham game was significant. I'll have to try and find out why, but it was definitely significant.
I think you're right. Was it not the first Tyne tees or something like that?
I think it could have been, It could have been the first time ITV televised a game. And no surprise to see they picked Newcastle, George.
No, absolutely. We're off to Charlton now after that debacle at Everton. Charlton's not a side that's challenging for anything. In fact, they're going to be a side that's hanging on by their fingernails to stay there. Lenny Lawrence still the manager. Lenny Lawrence, a great character, a nice man actually, but a great character. Talk football forever. And Charlton's team had, another one of these teams that picked up people who were on their way out, like Bob Boulder in goal, Mark Hazelwood and Peter Shirtcliffe in defence, Mark Stewart, Colin Walsh, John Pearson and Jim Melrose in the forward line. All 30-plus players who were looking for an easy way out, I think, is how I'd describe it. But still good players. It's a game we should have something about. We should have a chance to have a goal. Willie McFall sends an unchanged team, and with Darren Jackson in the squad as he had been before. But Paul Goddard's back now as well, and so he's relegates Cunningham to substitutes bench. Tidy game, a reasonably good game at the Valley. 7,333. Get it right, George. Selhurst Park, that modernised in the Valley, and Charlton go and share with Crystal Palace.
I remember that.
Selhurst Park, and this is one of the games. In fact, it might have been one of the first games when they played at Selhurst Park. Anyway, it was the first one for us. 7,300. Now, that's one of the things my memory says that Charlton suffered from. The Charlton fans were quite reluctant to go to Selhurst Park. It's a bit like us asking us to go down the road, isn't it? It's about the same sort of distance.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a tidy game. William McFall's side gave as good as they got. An own goal on 44 minutes just before half-time by Glenn Roeder gives Charlton a 1-0 lead. And then something that the fans had been waiting for both home and away was the first goal from Paul Goddard. And on 80 minutes, he cracks the ball in from the edge of the penalty area to give us a 1-1 draw, which is much relieved, but takes a bit of pressure off the league position and lifts the spirits a little bit, I think, is the best way to describe it. So we're now back home and we're facing Nottingham Forest. And it's nothing against no game against the Brian Clough teams is easy. And this, we don't think this one's going to be easy either. Willie McFall's got the same team, except at substitute. He's promoted another kid from the juniors, Anthony Nesbitt, and he's a substitute this time. 26,000 at the game, and Nottingham Forest still managed by Cloughie. He's got a Dutch goalkeeper now, Hans Segers, and then he's got Gary Fleming, Stuart Pearce at left back, who we get to know, Des Walker, a long-time England centre-half eventually, Chris Fairclough, Ian Bowyer, Johnny Metgood, Neil Webb, Nigel Clough, the manager's son, Phil Starbuck, and on the left side, Franz Carr, who we get to know very well as well. And it's a good game. It's a tidy football game, end-to-end stuff. And 16 minutes, Kenny Wharton gets a goal, and you wouldn't be surprised if I said it was from a corner, would you, Steve?
And yeah, no. Posted that.
Yes. I mean, just incredible. And then it looks like we're going in, but we don't go in at half time. It was just on half time. Phil Starbuck equalisers for Forest. And second half come out and it's end-to-end stuff. Very, very nice, tidy game. And on 68 minutes, Andy Thomas puts Wood in the lead. Then on 85 minutes, Peter Beardsley makes it 3. And I think it's a comfortable ride to the finish. Unfortunately, Franz Carr pops up just after Beardsley's goal and makes it 3-2. And from then on, it's backs to the wall for Newcastle. It had 5 minutes of absolute bombardment from Forest, but we held out and ended up with the 3-2 win. But a good game. I can remember that being at that game and how much I enjoyed it because the one thing about Cloughie's teams, they always try to play football. They weren't the sort of people who shut up shop. Although it famously did once. What's now called Park the Bus. I'm trying to what it was. I think it was one of the European Champions League semi-finals. They got accused of destroying football because they had 10 men on the goal line almost. So we now we're now at Sheffield Wednesday after the Nottingham Forest game. We're away to Sheffield Wednesday, and these games are always quite tense between the two. They give her a tough time at St James's Park, so we know it's going to be tough at Hillsborough. 29,000 at the game. Howard Wilkinson's still their manager. Team almost unchanged from the one that we played at St James's. Hodge, Bradshaw, Sterling, Paul Hart, Glyn Snowden, Nigel Worthington, Gary Megson, Gary Shelton and Lee Chapman as the big blonde centre forward. And Serge Jonsson is a Danish player that Howard Wilkinson's brought in. William McFall has the luxury of selling down an unchanged team if they hope of getting something out of this game. It's a decent enough game, but Stuffer knocked out of it in first half hour. Lee Chapman had from a corner on 12 minutes. Cole Bradshaw slides one in from another corner, and we're 2-0 down at half time. And that's the way it stayed. Sheffield just hung on to it, and we never actually did look like we would get into that game, which is quite disappointing. But so we come home now to a home game against the champions, against Everton, and we know this is a tough one. 35,000 at the game, which tells you what that it was a special game with it being the champions. William McFall is able to put out an unchanged team again, and Howard Kendall comes with a similarly with an unchanged team. Southall give to Stevens, Watson, Ratcliffe, Harper, Poynton, Sheedy, Stephen, Paul Power, Adrian Heath, and Graham Sharp. And we know it's going to be tough. Well, it was tougher than tough because they give us the run around. Paul Power on 23 minutes scored. Trevor Stephen on 54 and 59 minutes. And then 82 minutes, Adrian Heath just caps off the scoring. And it's 4-0 win to Everton. Interesting comment I'll make is that the referee is someone who I've met before. Ken Lupton, he's from Stockton. Now, I wonder what these days would be said if we were playing at St James's and we were playing one of the top 6 at St James's and the referee was from Stockton. I don't think that would go down too well. Anyway, a 4-0 loss. 4-0 loss was the result. So having a local referee didn't do much for us, unfortunately. So we now off to Watford for the away part of the league against Watford, and people we're now looking over our shoulder at this league because we're in the wrong end, and a couple more defeats, and we're not just going to be in the wrong end. We're going to be bouncing along the bottom. 18,000 at the game. Graham Taylor, the manager, he's got all the stars in the game: Tony Courton, Bardsley, McClellan, Rostron, Jacket, Porter, Richardson, John Barnes, Mark Falco. William McFall got the luxury of sending an unchanged team out again. A good game of football, but destroyed for us in the first 10 minutes by a piece of sublime skill from none other than John Barnes, right through the defence and bangs the ball past Martin Thomas and 1-0. And that's the way it stayed. We never looked like breaking them down. And apart from mazy runs by John Barnes, there was they weren't going to score either. So, but a game which has nothing special for us, other than the fact that Barnes was really on form. So we're on a Thursday night now, and we're at Old Trafford to be playing Manchester United, and again we really are getting a hard run of fixtures this part of the season. 43,500 at Old Trafford. Sir Alex Ferguson now their manager. Big stars in the team: Chris Turner, Kevin Moran, Mike Juxbury, Colin Gibson, Liam O'Brien is a name that we know very well up here. Jesper Olsen, Gordon Strachan, Norman Whiteside, Frank Stapleton and Peter Davenport, all talented players. Willie McFall has, again, the luxury of selling an unchanged team. Ian Stewart's now the substitute on the team, and halfway through the second half, he has to come on for Paul Stevenson. So, get off to a nightmare start. Own goal from David McCreary. Norman Whiteside on 9 minutes makes it 2. Fortunately, Darren Jackson scores on 20 to make it 2-1. And after half time, it was just the Jesper Olsen show. This Danish lad really took the match by the scruff of the neck and laid one on for Frank Stapleton and then scored one himself. So we come away with a 4-1 defeat. And it was not a very pleasant defeat. We really never looked like getting into this game at all. So 4-1 loss, and we're now actually bumping along the bottom two. That's how bad this run of results has been, and we're certainly need some uplift. So we're now at home to Coventry City, and everybody's hoping that let's get the show on the road. Otherwise, we're in trouble. 22,300 at the game, and Willie McFall again sends out what is basically an unchanged team, bar one, because he's now bought Peter Jackson from Bradford, very good centre half, and not the best footballer that we've had at Newcastle, but another 100%. You know, he always give his absolute best, and him and Glenn Roeder made quite a decent partnership. So he's in the team. And just to add to the changes, Willie McFall's promoted another junior. Jeff Wrightson comes in from the juniors to get a professional contract, and he's straight into the team. And I applaud him for that. Coventry City, George Curtis, the manager, old fullback. All the all pros in the team, but Brian Kilcline still a centre back. Nicky Pickering, Dave Bennett, Cyril Regis in the side to give us trouble, and trouble they gave us. On 1 minute, Dave Bennett sneaks into a corner and they're 1-0 up. And then after half time, Cyril Regis, how can I say, bullies a goal off the corner. He just uses his physical strength to upset Martin Thomas and Kenny Wharton on the goal line, and it's 2-0. And we think, well, that's it. But Neil MacDonald managed to pull back one on 84 minutes and 2-1. But despite the huffing and the puffing, we never looked like getting an equaliser. It was going to be a loss. So we're now at home to Northampton in the FA Cup third round, and 23,000 at the game. Willie McFall's got the luxury of an unchanged team. Graham Carr is the manager of Northampton Town. Now we know Graham Carr because he became our chief scout for a long time, especially in Europe, in France. Reputed for telling us a lot of the French lads that have been through Newcastle, and of course the father of the comedian Alan Carr. And Northampton, not the best side in the world, but got some tidy players who are ex first division players like Trevor Morley from West Ham, and Ricky Hill, and Eddie McGoldrick, John Miller, Keith McPherson, all tidy players in the day. But that being said, they shouldn't trouble us. It's a straightforward first division against second division, and they're not the best team in the division anyway. So we get off to a flying start, and Paul Goddard on 3 minutes puts us 1-0 in the lead, and then proceeding along after half time, it looked like we're going to drift nicely through to the next round when Richard Hill, one of the old hands in Northampton's forward line, from a corner makes it 1-1. And we're now, all the fingernails are getting bitten in the Gallagher corner, and remember that. But then Andy Thomas, just 1 minute later, on 68 minutes, sneaks in and gets a nice drive into the bottom left-hand corner of the net and makes it 2-1. So we get through that round of the FA Cup, the third round, on a 2-1 victory over Northampton, which is absolutely great. We're now off to Anfield for the game against Liverpool. We know this is not going to be easy, but nonetheless, everybody hopes they'll have a go. 39,000 in Anfield, and Kenny Dalglish is the manager. In the list of players in that team is Grobbelaar, Hansen, Lawrenson, Barry Venison, Gary Gillespie, Jan Molby, John Walk, Ronnie Whelan, Craig Johnson, Paul Walsh, and Ian Rush. And, it just a team of all talents and charging around at the top rather than at the bottom. Willie McFall has an unchanged team, and hopes that that'll settled team will do something. Well, they don't really. We good first half, give as good as we got in the first half. And then on 53 minutes, Paul Walsh scores. And then just to tie it up, 78 minutes, Ian Rush scores. And after that, we just weren't in the game. It became a stroll for Liverpool to a 2-0 victory. So we're now at the fourth round of the FA Cup, and we draw Preston North End. Again, they're a lower division team. We shouldn't have any trouble with these. It's amazing how the cup brings Newcastle fans out, though. We're now up to 31,000 at this game, after we just had a beating at Liverpool. It usually goes down after a defeat like that. Well, because it's the FA Cup and we've already got the third round, here we are at the fourth round, and 31,000 at the game. Willie McFall's got an unchanged team, nice settled team, and Preston North End come with their team, and their manager is somebody we know very well, called John McGrath. And Alan Kelly is someone else that we know because he's got a relative playing for Newcastle United. Bob McNeil, Michael Bennett, Bob Atkins, Alex Jones, and then a name which sticks out like a sore thumb, Sam Allardyce, playing for Preston North End. Les Chapman, ooh. Yes, for lots of reasons, yeah. And Gary Brazil and Nigel Jemson. Tidy side, but a one that we should beat, and beat them we do. It's dour first half, I've got to say, though, 0-0. Then after half time, it was Paul Goddard took the game by the scruff of the neck. and later one on from a corner for Glenn Roeder, a knockdown, and then on 62 minutes, then on 77 he scored the second one himself, Paul Goddard, to give us the passage through to the 5th round of the FA Cup, and that's always an exciting time for Newcastle United to think we're going to do something. And the next game is a home game against Luton Town. They'll give us a hard game at Kenilworth Road, and although they're not up there fighting for titles, they're middle of the road side and got some decent players. 22,000 at the game, and William McFall sends out a team with only one change, and that's David McCreary is got a slight knock and goes to substitute, and Darren Jackson comes in place of him, and then he also introduces a new lad from Scotland called Albert Craig, and my memory of Albert is that he played some decent football, but he was a bit light on the ball. He got knocked off the ball far too easily. Otherwise, I think he could have had a good career at Newcastle, but because the fans certainly like his style. But he just was too late, and got easily knocked off. Anyway, we go into this FA Cup, into this league game with the hope of beating Luton. Well, we get a fright because on 12 minutes, Ashley Grimes scores for Luton. And what that just simply does is seems to wake Newcastle up, because within a minute, we've got a corner and Peter Jackson heads a goal in, equaliser from a corner. Then in another 10 minutes, Paul Goddard scores a blinder of a goal, a thundering drive from the edge of the penalty area to make it 2-1. Everybody's thinking we're coasting to a nice 2-1 win. Well, Luton have a different idea about that. And Mick Harford, who's we get to know quite well, manages to slip in an equaliser on 78 minutes. So we get a point at least, but still not enough, because we're, as I said earlier, we're now bouncing along the bottom end of the league and just keeping our head above water, as it were. So we now at Luton, and we're away to QPR, which isn't a happy hunting ground for at all. So we go to QPR, and 10,700 at the game. Jim Smith still a manager, and that team of all talents: David Seaman, Terry Fenwick, Clive Walker, Martin Allen, Wayne Faraday, Gary Bannister, Johnny Byrne, all talented players. Willie McFall sends out an unchanged team. He keeps Albert Craig in the side, and he tries an experiment in this game, which didn't come off really. He tried a third centre back. He left Roeder and Jackson in, and he brought Kevin Scott in as well. But obviously trying to bolster the defence, because we're leaking goals like a sieve, and we're not in the right place in the league. And it seems as though it might work, because on 63 minutes, having had a dreadful first half, on 63 minutes, Paul Goddard puts you in the lead. And people think, well, okay, this could be working, but piece of skill from Johnny Byrne, a centre forward of QPR, on 70 minutes, and as an equaliser. 75 minutes, Mike Villery adds a second, and it's 2-1, and that's the way it stays to the end. So we're now actually in the bottom two. That result actually puts us in the bottom two, and we desperate is a word I don't like to use, but that's what we are. That's what we are. We're desperate, and of course, to make things even more desperate, our next game's an away game at Tottenham, who are riding high. 38,000 at the game. With David Pleat's still a manager, and they've still got a team of all talents with Ray Clements, Danny Thomas, Richard Goff, Gary Mabbott, Paul Allen, Ozzy Ordelis, Glenn Hoddle, Chris Waddle, Steve Hodge, and Clive Allen. It's a more than tidy side who are playing well. Willie McFall has the luxury of an unchanged team again. No, sorry, he doesn't. McCreary is now fit again, and he comes in, and Kevin Scott stands down. He seems to have abandoned the experiment with 3 centre halves. Game first half is fairly even, except on 20 minutes, Clive Allen knocks in a penalty after none other than Glenn Roeder brings down Chris Waddle in the penalty area, and they get a penalty, and Clive Allen scores it. And that's the way it stayed at the end. Newcastle at least did have a go at this, because it could have been a disaster, but it wasn't. And they had like credit for having a go at Tottenham. And we're now at Wimbledon. It's not the best place to go after a visit to Tottenham. You're still in London. Actually, what I've missed saying was that the Tottenham game, of course, was the FA Cup 5th round.
Oh, right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Is that the infamous one, George, where there was a crowd surge?
There was, yes, there was, yes. And I just slipped me memory there that was a cup match. It wasn't and I was trying to work out why there was so many away games altogether, and that was it, because the cup game was drawn away as well. But they give it a go, but it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. Anyway, we're now away again at Wimbledon, and another tough game. And Dave Bassett's the manager. 6,700 at the game. I mean, 6,700 at a first division game just blows my mind. It does. Never mind. Dave Bassett and Kevin Gage, Mark Morris, Nigel Winterburn, and then Vinnie Jones, infamous Vinnie Jones, Brian Gale, Laurie Sanchez, Glenn Hodges, Wally Downs, Andy Sear, and Alan Cork. Wally Downs, I hesitated with that name, is because he's a trainer for various teams in the London area, particularly Crystal Palace at the moment, I think. He supports Roy Hodgson. And over the years, he's a good age. Over the years, when he's been a trainer on the bench, he causes more trouble in the dugout than players on the field do. If there's a scrap at the sideline when he's around the place, you guarantees he's in the thick of it, and he seems to have a particular dislike of Newcastle United. No, some of the scraps he's had with our training staff are legend, but and there he is on the field. I don't know what he was like on the field, but because at Wimbledon they were all mad, weren't they? Anyway, we go to Wimbledon with an unchanged team. Unchanged or not, doesn't do any good, because within 15 minutes, Andy Sears put them 1-0 in the lead. We get a bit of hope when Beardsley on 52 minutes equalises, but within less than a minute, Andy Sears makes it 2-1. 68th minute, Andy Sears makes it 3-1. So it's Andy Sears' hat-trick and a 3-1 win to Wimbledon. And we're now one defeat away from actually being on the bottom of the league, which is frightening, to put it mildly. We're at home to Aston Villa next, and used to having good games with Villa. 21,000 at the game, considering how poor the results have been, and the fact that we're bottom of the league. 21,000 is not a bad crowd. And Willie McFall very loyally plays an almost unchanged team. The only difference is that he brings in Joe Allen for Darren Jackson. And Billy McNeil's manager of Aston Villa still, and he has a team of quite talented players, some very talented players. Nigel Spink at goal, Paul Elliott, the centre half, centre back, and Martin Keown, who made his name really at Arsenal and as now regular TV pundit as well. His famous claim is, of course, he was a member of the Invincibles and got all the medals, but never actually played more than 2 games. But no, Tony DeRigo, Steve Hunt, Tony Daly, and Gary Thompson, a talented team. So we're going to have a go to get this one. Well, we do have a go, and within 10 minutes, Tony Cunningham put one up from a header from a corner, and we think it's going well. Then just before half time, Tony Daly sneaks in to get an equaliser for Villa, so it's 1-1. And as the game's progressing, people are getting very restless in the Gallagher corner, but Peter Beardsley turns up with one of his solo runs, and bang, makes it 2-1. So we get a victory which doesn't take you off the bottom of the league, but at least it stems the tide, should we say, and takes us to a position where another win, and we'd be heading up the league again. So it's going to be tough to do that, though, because our next game's away to Manchester City, and they don't give anything away. However, 23,000 at the game, and Jimmy Frizzle's their manager, and they have their team of all talents there with Redmond, Simpson, Clements, Mick McCarthy, Paul Stewart, Imre Virardi, of course, has now changed to Manchester City from Sheffield Wednesday. He's moved around a bit since he left us, and David White on the wing, and Willie McFall has an unchanged team with Darren Jackson sitting on the subs bench, and he has to come on for Paul Goddard halfway through the second half because Paul gets a knock. A good battle between Manchester City and Newcastle. Conditions aren't the best. It's very wet, and Main Road, when it's very wet, it's like a ploughed field. I mean, literally like a ploughed field. So what were the conditions underfoot and made so wet, it 0-0 almost seemed inevitable, and it was 0-0. Nobody looked like they were going to score. The only thing that was going to happen was the ball was going to get stuck in the mud. So 0-0, but for us, that 0-0 gives us the opportunity to just inch off the bottom of the league, and we're it's looking better, but still going to have some work to do. Home game isn't an easy one to come after that. Tottenham again, another team that's challenging at the top. 30,700 at the game. That gives you an indication how much the Geordies think of Tottenham's football. William McFall's got an unchanged team. He has Paul Goddard's fit again, and Tony Cunningham sits onto the subs bench. David Pleat's still Tottenham manager and brings his very talented team to St James's. Gough, Thomas, Ray Clements, Richard Gough, Mitchell Thomas, Gary Mabbott, Gary Stevens, Paul Allen, Ozzy Ordelis, the Argentinian, Glenn Hoddle, Steve Hodge, Chris Waddle, and Clive Allen. And it looks like we're in trouble in 10 minutes because by then Glenn Hoddle scored on 9. Beautiful goal, and everybody's the nerves are jangling in the Gallagher corner. I know that because it's where I would be with my family. And then on, just as we're thinking it's another defeat, a piece of real skill from Paul Goddard, individual skill, and a nice long drive, and he gets the equaliser. And that's where we stay. Credit to Willie McFall and his team. They didn't just sit there, though. They did have a go at Tottenham and try and get the winner. Well, they needed if they could, because we're league positions dire. But a good goal by Paul Goddard, and at least that's another point which just temporarily takes us out of the bottom two, off the bottom of the league and up into a safe well, not safe, but safer place. And now we're at home to Southampton, and
there's a flurry of programs now as well. I mean, people might be watching this thinking, has Steve fallen asleep? But actually, George and I both looked for programs, and there was just a shortage of them online.
Yeah.
I tell you what, George, I'm going to go before we look at the Southampton game. I'm going to go to the ads. You go get the phone.
Oh.
Big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you want to order some, then you can go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks also to New Workwear. They were set up in 2018 and they are an agile and dedicated workwear provider. You can find them at their website, newworkwear.com. Thanks to Media Arts as well for all the help with the video side of things. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under this video. Hit the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on your podcast providers such as iTunes and Spotify. If you'd like to take out a cult membership, which means you get a cup, a pen, a membership card, a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw, then put your smartphone over this QR code now. It'll take you straight to the site. You can set up and pay a one-off fee of £25. Alternatively, go to NUFCmatters.com and check for membership. If you're a subscriber, you can apply for a free car sticker. Just email John at NUFCmatters.com to claim yours today. The new Shearer raffle is up and running. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket to win a limited edition Alan Shearer signed ball. Enter now at NUFCmatters.com. We've got a couple of events coming up. Newcastle United question and answer live with Liam Kennedy, Jordan Cronin and Dominic Skerr from Newcastle World and the Shields Gazette in association with NUFC Matters. Takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre, 11th of August at 7 p.m. and tickets are £5. The Christmas event will be with Frank Clark and John Gibson, Thursday, December the 7th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £15 from NUFCmatters.com. And Waddle, Keegan and Beardsley, the class of 84 with special guests, takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on Westcott Road in Newcastle on Thursday, January the 25th. Tickets are available direct from the theatre, 0844 24 91 000, or go to the website for further details. And don't forget, starting on the 7th of August, you will be able to hear myself, Steve Wraith, on the Northeast Footy Breakfast. This comes to you in association with the Tyne Radio, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock, 5 days a week. Check out the Facebook for more details. Okay, before the break, we were looking at the 86-87 season, and we had got to Southampton at home.
Southampton at home, yeah. And Southampton had given them a really hard game down there, and they weren't going to be easy here either. But we're desperate now. We're struggling to get off the bottom of the league, and the team... Willie McFall gets the team to give it a go. I think is the best way to describe it. And he feels an unchanged team with 23,000 at the game. And a Southampton team of all-stars, Chris Nichols, the manager still, Peter Shilton, Mark Wright, Kevin Bond, Dave Alonso, Glenn Cockrell, Jimmy Craze, George Lawrence, Andy Townsend, and now Matt Letizia is actually in the team, having just been a substitute when we were down there, and Danny Wallace. And people anticipate a tough game, but it was a good game. But we went through it quite well. And the star of the game was Paul Gascoigne. Paul Gascoigne took the thing by the scruff of the neck and laid a goal on for Paul Goddard on 22 minutes, and then a second followed just before half time. So we went in 2-0 at half time, and that's how it stayed. Southampton never looked like they were going to score. Even Matt Letizia didn't look like he was ever going to score, because normally he's a death knell for us. But it was a tidy win, but a good win and an important win, because we now actually are off the bottom of the league and heading in the right direction. So we then have another home game. We have a series of home games, which I don't know how the fixtures ended. I think it's because of earlier in the year with the bad weather, there'd been some postponements and the fixtures had been moved. So we ended up with 3 home games on a Wednesday. It was Tottenham, Saturday Southampton, and this is the next week Saturday, and it's Leicester at home. Always a tidy side, always a good game of football, if nothing else. But we want more than a good game of football. We want to win. And again, McFall seems to have talked them into having a go, and that's exactly what they do. 24,000 at the game, so the crowd's beginning to believe that they're going to do something. And within 4 minutes, Kenny Wharton scored a goal. Not a header this time. It was a tap in from a knockdown. And then in 6 minutes, none other than Paul Goddard comes in with the second one. And that's how it stayed. And whatever Leicester tried to do, they couldn't do it. And we certainly didn't look like we're going to add to our score list. Leicester managed by Brian Hamilton, the mercurial Irish forward, but a talented side with lots of ex-Ipswich players, Russell Osman, Mark Venus, Gary McAllister from Manchester United, of course, and Alan Smith, the ex-Arsenal centre forward. But it didn't matter. They weren't going to beat with that day. It was 2-0, and we're actually well and truly off. Well, off the bottom is the next thing. And yet another home game on the Wednesday against Norwich City. And bear in mind that when we went to Norwich, they turned us over well and truly. 25,000 at the game now, and the crowd obviously wants to get behind the team in their fight for survival. And Willie McFall's got the benefit of playing an unchanged team. Darren Jackson comes back as substitute. Norwich have Ken Brown as their manager, and almost identical team that played us when we went down there with Steve Bruce in the centre back, of course, Mike Phelan from Manchester United, ex-Manchester United, Robert Rosario in the forwards. But then this forward that they bought from Grimsby, Kevin Drinkell, who's a nightmare for us, always a nightmare. So he proves 16 minutes, and we're 1-0 down thanks to Kevin Drinkell. And it looks as though that Norwich are going to give us a heartbreak. But on 40 minutes, Paul Goddard scores the equaliser. 62, Paul Gascoigne scores. 78 minutes, Neil MacDonald with a penalty. And then on 88 minutes, Darren Jackson comes on as substitute for David McCreary and scores the fourth. So a 4-1 win against Norwich. And not only does that lift off the bottom to out the bottom altogether, well away from the bottom, it does a goal difference, a pile of good as well, to get 4 in, because our defensive record has been pretty abysmal up to now. So we now go away after 4 games at home to Oxford United. And people think, well, gosh, this is important enough to try and have a go at this one, and have a go they did is my memory of it. Maurice Evans is the manager, Steve Hardwick's the goalkeeper, John Truick and Kevin Brock, our ex-midfielders, are in the side. They've got Dean Saunders now as well, and Ray Houghton from Liverpool. So a tidy side, but it's Paul Goddard who makes the difference. On 39 minutes, he opens the scoring, and we go in at half-time 1-0 up. People are hoping that that's how it'll stay. But on 80 minutes, John Dyer of Oxford scores an equaliser. But that's the way it stays, 1-1, and we get another point towards the climbing the table. Thank goodness for that, because we're in dire straits, really, dire straits. And it's next is another away game, a tough away game against Arsenal, who are one of the challengers, and everybody thinks we'll be looking to get away with this for not getting a shellacking. Well, we go to Highbury, 18,000 at Highbury, which isn't a brilliant crowd for a team like Arsenal. Anyway, George Graham has his team of talents on: Lukic, Viv Anderson, Michael Thomas, Steve Williams, David O'Leary, Tony Adams, David Rocastle, Paul Davis, Perry Groves, Charlie Nicholas, Martin Hayes. The substitutes Graham Ricks, and he gets on for Rocastle in the second half. Because Graham Ricks is a talented player, has a very good career. And Willie McFall has the pleasure of sending an unchanged team out. He keeps Paul Stevenson in, the youngsters, Darren Jackson's still in. And, well, basically, Newcastle have a go, and Arsenal clearly uncomfortable. And on 29 minutes, another Paul Goddard goal gets us off to a flying start. After that, it was backs to the wall, but backs to the wall or not, they held on, and that was a 1-0 win at Arsenal. A win at Highbury that was never ever expected. And not only are we now out of the relegation slots, we're actually sliding a little way up the league, which is refreshing. We're now at home to Manchester United, and this is a game which, even in the wildest dreams, Newcastle fans know it's not going to be easy. But it's a good game. 33,000 in the crowd, which tells you more about the opposition as much as it does about us. So Alex Ferguson, obviously, is the manager, brings his team of talents to St James's, which includes Liam O'Brien, who comes to us, and Willie McFall's got an unchanged team. Andy Thomas is the substitute, and it's a good game. End-to-end stuff. Woodward getting battered at both ends, but on 12 minutes, Glenn Roeder takes a knockdown from Paul Goddard, and we're 1-0 up, and everybody's quite happy about that. We're more than happy. But unfortunately, a little man called Gordon Strachan, who's playing for Manchester United, nips in to get them an equaliser on just before the half-time whistle. And people think that, well, if it stays like this, at least we'll get a point. Well, they needn't have worried. And that's Paul Goddard, I think. Yes, it is. Yeah. You can see by the waving hands what he's done. He's scored a goal. And it's the winning goal on 80 minutes. And yet another Goddard goal winning a match. And a 2-1 win against Manchester United at any time would be great. But on this particular time, when we're desperate for points, it's absolutely fantastic.
I think the amazing thing about that, people, younger fans looking at that will be going, well, where's that?
Yes,
like Newcastle.
Yes.
Well,
No,
of course,
behind
the referee, who I think is Keith Hackett,
yes,
and Mark Hughes, who's lying on the ground, is the benches, the East Stand benches, and behind them are the very, very first executive boxes that Newcastle United had. So it's it's quite a unique shot, that, and Paul Goddard, of course, as you say, just really, really hit the ground running at Newcastle in that little period, didn't he? I mean, I think he broke at the time the club record, which was 7 goals in 7 games.
He did, and that's why I made that comment at the beginning about managers signing crucial players, for crucial signings, and that's the one that sticks in my mind, because without his 7 goals, relegation staring in the face. You know, there's no doubt about that. Anyway, we're now off to Everton, and the champions aren't going to make it easy for us, and they don't. Unchanged team, but irrelevant to some extent, because 44,000 in Goodison Park. In Everton, just on song. Howard Candle picks his usual strong team, and they are just too strong for us. They got a young forward called Wayne Clark come in, and he scores a hat-trick. 49 minutes, 82 minutes, and 90 minutes. And we really, a game we were never, ever in. Halted our progress up the league, but still hasn't plunged in anything like the bad situation we were in beforehand. And we then have to go home to face a Chelsea team who are still in a position to start challenging for something. We fortunately, again, Willie McFall's got an unchanged team to call on. John Hollins brings his stars from Chelsea, and they got a new man called Nicky Hazard who's creating lots of interest, and Gordon Jury's joined Kerry Dixon, a very dangerous partnership up front. And people are expecting 22,000 at the game, are expecting all sorts of things. Well, what they got was a good end-to-end sort of game, with the first half of no goals at all. And on 71 minutes, none other than Paul Goddard again scores the winning goal on 71 minutes, and we get a 1-0 win against Chelsea, which again pushes us just that little bit further away from the trouble at the bottom of the league. We're then off to West Ham for a away game at West Ham, and not sure we're going to get anything out of this because West Ham are playing well. 18,000 at Upton Park. Willie McFall sends an unchanged team, but with Albert Craig as the substitute, and he comes on for Darren Jackson halfway through the second half. But we give them a fright. 6 minutes, there's a penalty, and Neil MacDonald sticks it away. And I've got to say, Newcastle dig their heels in and really give it a go, and look as though they're going to get away with a super win. But on 85 minutes, Mark Ward pops in and scores an equaliser for West Ham, and makes it 1-1. And everybody's cock a hoop with that. But it's what unexpected one, and that makes it all the more enjoyable. So we now come home to a game against Charlton Athletic, who were beaten at Charlton. So everybody thinks after those run of good results, we're going to get 2 points out of this, all right, no bother. 27,000 at the game. Well, what a surprise they got. Willie McFall's unchanged team goes out, and Lenny Lawrence sends his unchanged team out, and Newcastle United are taken apart by a young man called Garth Crooks, a left winger, and he just tore Newcastle apart. And by half-time, Miller and Crooks had scored to make it 2-0, and then just after half-time, Carl Leyburn made it 3-0, and that's how Charlton finished the match in the lead 3-0. But by now we're safe. You know, there's no panic. And the last game of the season is against Nottingham Forest away, and Willie McFall sends an unchanged team with Alan Davis as the sub. Brian Clough's team is his star of all talents again. And they're playing quite well, but they're not challenging. 18,000 at the City Ground. And 41 minutes, Stuart Pearce slams a penalty in as he did after a handball by John Anderson. Colin Foster adds a second just before half-time. So they're 2-0 up. But after the half-time, Paul Gascoigne gets involved in the game in a big way, and eventually scores on 70 minutes. And then after that, it's Forest backs to the wall, because Newcastle really do give them a game. And we end our season at Nottingham Forest. A touchy season, to put it mildly. We could easily have made a mistake, but we ended up 17th. But when you reckon that before that run of Goddard's goals, we were bottom. We were out and done. And yet there was Paul Goddard come to a rescue, and turned out to be an enormous signing. 47 games, we used 27 players, which isn't bad. But a huge sigh of relief, is to put it mildly. And some nice pictures there, yes, of Newcastle and the squad and the manager, yes, yeah,
great stuff, mate. Great memories, and I remember that season as if it was yesterday. You know, the amazing run of Paul Goddard will always stay in my mind, and you couldn't be more thankful for him. And I think that West Ham televised game, although that wasn't the start of the run, that really epitomised what was in this squad. And I think William McFall must have looked at that performance 4-0 in front of the TV cameras, and must have thought, you know, I can get something out of these lads. And it wouldn't be the first time that he would do that. And that little run, as you say, and purchasing Paul Goddard was a big moment in our season, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And as I say, we all get hung up, as we do on the platform sometimes, about legends and people that have done this and people that have done that. I would suggest that them 7 goals from Paul Goddard were as important as anything anybody else has done. Because my worry would have been, had we gone down this year that we're talking about, we would have struggled to get back. I think we would have struggled because we didn't have any money. We were still, you know, nearly $1 million in debt at that time, which was enormous in those days. And trying to build a ground and all that. It would have been difficult, but Paul Goddard, I think his nickname was the General, wasn't it? Well,
he got the General. He also got Sarge, I think.
Yeah, Sarge. Yeah. Well, he whatever he did, he paid his fee back. So another interesting season for Newcastle United.
Very, very interesting, George. As always, a pleasure to sit and listen. I know that people out there love listening to the show as well. Look forward to getting into the next episode, although it doesn't have a happy ending.
No, that's right.
George, thanks very much, mate.
My pleasure. See you soon, Steve. And thanks for watching, everybody.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.